Good morning, church, and welcome to what I hope is one of the brightest seasons in the life of our church so far. These are difficult times and everything's kind of rapidly changing, but our God is not changing, His Word's not changing, His power is not changing, His attentiveness to the world and what's going on is not changing. Our mission hasn't changed and our vision hasn't changed. We started 2020 by saying we have this vision to be a family-serving, community-blessing, world-reaching church, working with all hands on deck to see disciples made for the first time and for a lifetime. And the way that looks and is expressed is going to be constantly shifting and evolving. And the truth is, it always should be. We should always be seeking the Spirit's guidance in what it looks like to be attentive to the world around us and responding in ways that act as ambassadors of the gospel and as the hands and feet of Jesus. And these are unprecedented times. We need to be willing to adapt and respond and innovate and to serve God in the midst of whatever is going on. And one of our core values as a church is cultural relevance. We set that up front almost 8 years ago now. Hard to believe that it's been that long, but now is a time where we get to see how that value is lived out. This is the way we defined it. We said we strive to be people who are culturally relevant. We desire to present the unchanging gospel of Jesus through ever-changing means in an ever-shifting culture. The reality is this is a constant. This isn't just in response to a pandemic. This is always an ongoing desire to take the unchanging hope of Jesus, to never compromise that message, but to hold on to the means that we communicate that with loosely so that we can share the hope of Christ in ways and using words and through means that are most effective in doing so in whatever situations we find ourselves in. And so for us, for the next little while, what it looks like to be the church for one another and for our community is going to change, but that's going to open the doors to all sorts of new opportunities. I shared a quote in our newsletter this week, and it said, "In a time like now, Christian neighboring looks a lot less like fearful self-preservation and more like servanthood toward the elderly, those with HIV, autoimmune disease, or no health care, fatigued and under-resourced healthcare workers, etc. Wash hands for sure, then wash feet." That's not to say we abandon common sense, which makes me think, I saw a line, somebody saying, "I believe in prayer, I also believe in soap." There's a certain aspect of this where we don't abandon common sense. We don't use faith as some sort of reason or excuse to pretend or underestimate the significance of what's going on. I was proud of our leadership team yesterday. We got together, we spoke about the responsibilities we have as a church. We have civil responsibility, we have societal responsibility, we have moral responsibility, and we have a spiritual responsibility as leaders in the church to those in our congregation and as leaders in our church helping our community to reach out to the city that we live in. And we believe not holding a typical Sunday service at this time is the wisest decision, but don't believe this is the time to take our foot off the gas when it comes to our commitment to honoring God by serving one another and helping us as a church family reach out into our community. A part of that, of course, is committing ourselves to good, cautious health practices, regardless of the level of concern an individual might have or feel the risk is. Also, that'll include encouraging us as followers of Jesus to serve our neighbors and to put the interests of others above ourselves. Martin Luther had I think, a great balance of this when facing another outbreak of the bubonic plague. Earlier, it had wiped out a quarter of Europe's population, and he warned against the overconfidence and the foolishness of underestimating the seriousness of the plague, but he also called Christians to be faithful and fearless ministers of the gospel who would be obedient to and consider Jesus' word when he said, "When you care for the sick, you cared for me." And the words of the Apostle John in saying that Christ laid down his life for us, and so we ought to be willing to lay down our lives for one another. And he was all for following good health practices, but also would not deny his neighbor love and help, even if it came at risk to himself. He wrote very well, "By God's decree, the enemy has sent upon us poison and a deadly offal. Therefore I shall ask God mercifully to protect us. Then I shall fumigate, help purify the air, administer medicine, and take it. I shall avoid places and persons where my presence is not needed in order not to become contaminated and thus perchance infect and pollute others, and so cause their death as a result of my negligence. If God should wish to take me, he will surely find me, and I have done what he has expected of me, and so I am not responsible for either my own death or the death of others. If my neighbor needs me, however, I shall not avoid place or person, but will go freely. This is a time for a lot of different things. A time for self-isolation, times to go out. There would be times to rest and times to serve, times to invest in our families and remain just with those close to us, and a time to love Christ by loving strangers and at our own personal expense of time and whatever else we might be able to offer. And how you participate in what we're planning as a church in the coming weeks will really it'll require your own discernment. When we ask you to participate, recognize that's with a respect to your own process of prayerfully considering how you're feeling, who around you is vulnerable, and what your participation in public activities might be, and what's the balance of your responsibility in helping prevent the spread of the virus, but also to care for those in need. So with that in mind, I want to share a few of the things that we've got in mind that we're working on for today. We don't have the opportunity to gather together and worship, but we've got a couple of things for you to do. One for the nourishment of your soul, one for the discipleship of your kids if you have children, and one for the good of your neighbors. The first is going to be posted on our website is linked to 3 articles. One is just about kind of the anxiousness that Christians need not feel in times like these. It's filled with scriptural references, and I want to encourage you to read it carefully, read it critically, read it slowly. Thoughtfully click on the links to some of the Bible passages and read them, and quiet yourself and ask, does this bring me comfort? Do I believe this Bible verse is relevant to the situations that are going on in the world right now? Ask yourself, does this inspire me to love others? And if not, why not? Pray and ask God to speak to you and reveal. Have you been overly fearful and worried? Have you been underestimating the seriousness of what's gone on and the vulnerability of some in our population, and maybe been inconsiderate of those who have concerns that are greater than yours? The other 2 articles that will be linked there offer some interesting perspectives. One from C.S. Lewis, of course a great author, and another explaining more about Martin Luther's situation and practices in the 1500s. The second thing that you'll find online today is if you have kids, now is the time to take the reins in discipling them. Our children's ministry is all about helping kids hear about and come to know the love of God and the hope of Christ, but ultimately it's a parent's responsibility to disciple their kids, and we are wanting to be participants in that, enablers of that, empowering parents and a support to them as they raise their children in the ways of God, and we're going to be able to continue doing that even from a distance here. And so I found a resource provided freely over the next number of weeks. And so there'll be a link on the website to Lifeway Kids. You can sign up for an account. There's a redemption code you can put in so that you can access materials and use it to teach your kids. And this can be done on Sundays, and maybe you'll find if you've always wanted to start family devotions or some habit like that, this might be a great way to finally get started with that. Lastly, there's going to be a link to a way to help your neighbors. I'll be posting a form that you can print off, and what it is it's a short offer to your neighbors, letting them know that you live nearby and that you're willing to help if someone finds themselves in self-isolation, they're otherwise compromised and unable to go out. It's an offer to go and pick up prescriptions, or maybe do a grocery run, or whatever else they might need. It is a opportunity for you to put your name and your phone number and email address down so that you can be reached out to, that your neighbors know you're present. I know putting yourself out there like that might be a challenge. Of course, if you're not feeling healthy, that's not something to do at this time. But if you're feeling healthy, I want to ask you to really consider making this offer, even if you don't have a relationship with your neighbors. As far as your personal information going out there, of course, you have to do what you're comfortable with. If you're concerned that your neighbors are going to sell your email address to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, I don't know. I don't think you need to worry about that, because he's probably already got it. There's lots more coming up for our church. Next week we're going to post more of a Sunday service online, and we're going to be encouraging small group watch parties. So if you want to sign up for next Sunday to host a watch party, there'll be a sign up form on the website for you to do that, and we'll start putting that together. Our leadership team, in our discussions, wanted to make sure that there's no one who struggles with feeling alone or distant or isolated in this time, and wanted to make it known that they're available to connect with in this time. And so their names and the ability to email them is going to be on our website if you want to reach out to any of them with needs that you have, just to talk, to experience some connection in this time of social distancing. Reality is we'll use and respect that term, but let's be maybe practicing more physical distancing, and socially and relationally let's be pouring into one another. There's more we're working on. It's actually pretty excited to see how the ideas are coming forward for how we can be a beacon of hope in Surrey and maintain our connections and even strengthen our relationships in this time. And so that's all we've got for this morning. I love you with the affection of Christ. I'm praying for you, and I'm excited to see how our church will become stronger than it's ever been through this next little while. I want to ask and encourage you to reach out anytime if you've got needs, if you've got prayer requests, if you just want to connect. We are the church. Our public gatherings have been canceled for a while, but we, the church, are alive and well, and will continue running the race set out before us, and with the commitment we have to make disciples, to share the gospel, and to be a source of hope for those in our church family and beyond. And so bless you, and we will talk to you soon.